Chag Sameach. My name is Adam Raskin, and I am the rabbi of Congregation Har Shalom in Potomac, Maryland, a suburb right outside of Washington, D.C. And I am so excited to join all of you tonight and to join my rabbinic colleagues across the world in producing this conservative Masorti-sponsored Tikkun Leil Shavuot, this opportunity for Jewish learning and growth across the country and indeed across the world. There is a pasuk, a verse in the first chapter of the book of Ecclesiastes that says, Ein kol chadash tachat hashemesh. There really is nothing new under the sun. I'm thinking about that pasuk in the sense that in all the thousands of years of Jewish history, there is hardly anything, hardly any event, any circumstance that our ancestors have not confronted or seen at some point in time before us. And that includes, by the way, major health crises. For the past several weeks, I've been interested in models of Jewish leadership when our community is faced with similar challenges as in the past. Well, in the early to mid-19th century, the world was gripped with another public health crisis. A vicious cholera pandemic was raging on nearly every continent. Between the years of 1829 and 1852, millions of people were afflicted with cholera and died of that terrible disease. Cholera is a water-based bacteria that causes the release of massive amounts of fluids from the intestines and presents in some of the most awful symptoms of diarrhea, dehydration, vomiting. Some even died within a few hours of first showing those symptoms. Of course, epidemiology was far less advanced than it is today, and many of the courses of treatment were far more rudimentary as well. Cholera in those years was thought to have originated in India and spread along trade and military routes into the European continent, where the Jewish community, along with many others, was terribly afflicted by this disease. Let's zoom in to the city of Vilna, a city that was home to 100,000 Jews. 45% of the population of Vilna was Jewish. It was called the Jerusalem of Lithuania. There were over 100 shuls, a half a dozen daily Jewish newspapers. Vilna was the center of the Bund, the Jewish labor movement. It was a hotbed of Hebrew and Yiddish literature. There were a bevy of Jewish communal institutions in Vilna at this time. Well, in the early 1800s, 160 miles north of Vilna in a little town on the Latvian border, a person by the name of Israel ben Ze'ev Wolf Lipkin was born into an auspicious rabbinic family. By the time Israel turned the age of 12, he moved to the town of Salanter, where he studied and learned Torah and became a great Talmud scholar. And by the young age of only 33 years old, Israel ben Ze'ev Wolf Lipkin, who is now known as Israel Lipkin Salant, for the name of the town where he learned so much Torah, was appointed Rosh Yeshiva, the head of the Academy of Tomchei Torah in Vilna. Rabbi Israel Lipkin Salant was deeply pious and traditionally observant. And he's also known for promoting a movement called Musar. Musar has regained popularity and has experienced a resurgence of interest in recent years. And it's a movement that focuses on ethical improvement. It's a spiritual practice of cultivating a life of virtue and moral discipline. Well, at the height of the cholera epidemic in Vilna, Rabbi Israel Lipkin Salant, this brilliant, charismatic, renowned rabbi, albeit young, decided to make a courageous and controversial statement. His community, he saw, was so deeply vulnerable to infection. Suffering and death was everywhere, and there was no end in sight. In fact, the epidemic would go on for 4 more years. And this rabbi, who is known as much for his Talmudic erudition as his philosophies of ethical improvement and the development of good character, stood up on the bima of the great synagogue of Vilna in the year 5609 and did the unthinkable. Well, there are many different accounts of this story. Some of them specifically identify Rabbi Israel Lipkin Salant. Others just speak of the rabbi. The story's been retold by Yiddish writers, Russian historians, even Rabbi Israel Lipkin Salant's own son, Rabbi Yitzchak Lipkin, who would have been but 8 years old at the time. Listen to the following excerpt by the Hebrew Yiddish writer David Frischman. Ma'aseh b'shlosha she'achlu, he writes, here's a story of 3 who ate. Lo be'echad hayamim hapshutim mimei hashabbatot, not who ate on any day of the week, ki'im b'yom hakippurim, but 3 who ate on Yom Kippur. B'yom hakippurim shechal liyot b'shabbat, on Yom Kippur that year that happened to have fallen on Shabbat. Lo b'makom seter be'ein ro'eh ve'ein yodea, and they didn't eat in some secret place where no one could see or no one knew what was happening. Ki im le'enei kol Yisrael. Rather, they ate in the sight of all the Jewish people, asher bebeit HaKnesset hagadol, all the Jewish people who gathered together in the great synagogue on that day. Velo anashim rekim ufuchazim, they weren't lightweights, they weren't reckless people. Ki'im minisiei ha'edah, these were the princes, the leaders of the community. In Frischman's account, the 3 were the rabbi and 2 synagogue officials. It was early in the afternoon on Yom Kippur, just as the Musaf service was ending, and the rabbi stood up on the bima in the synagogue and announced, with the permission of God and the permission of the community, we hereby permit people to eat and drink today. Just then, the shamash, the beadle, brought forward a cup of wine and some cake from the rabbi's house, and he proceeded to eat and drink in the sight of the entire community on Yom Kippur afternoon. In the Yiddish book Gedolim von unser Zeit by Jacob Mark, the rabbi is identified as Rabbi Israel Salanter, and further he writes that the Dayanim, the rabbinic establishment in Vilna, was outraged that Rabbi Israel Lipkin Salanter did not consult them, and they opposed this decree vehemently. And yet another version, Rabbi Israel Lipkin Salanter posted placards all over Vilna announcing that the services on the high holidays would be shortened, there would be no piyutim, no extra readings, that encouraged people to spend time outdoors and to breathe fresh air. Placards that stated that in the courtyards of the synagogues, there would be tables set up with cake, albeit in very small portions, that people would be invited to eat if they felt that they needed to. Some say that Rabbi Israel Lipkin Salant did not himself make kiddush or eat, but just gave permission to others to do so if needed. Of all the variations, of all the different versions of this story, here's what we do know about Rabbi Israel Lipkin Salant. He raised funds to establish a hospital in a building that he rented to provide 1,500 beds for people to be treated who were sick at that time. And he encouraged the doctors in the town to work even without pay to treat these suffering people. We know that he organized groups of yeshiva students to be, as it were, first responders, people who could be called on to help and to provide assistance if someone fell ill. We know that he made sure that his own yeshiva students, his own yeshiva bachers, prepared meals right up until the beginning of Shabbat on Friday nights so that the hungry and the needy would be fed hot meals. We know that he reminded people in various situations, mourners, for example, who were weakened by illness themselves, that they should relax certain stringencies in order to care for their own health. And we know that he publicly reminded people to follow doctors' orders and not to try to be overly pious in the face of a public health emergency. We don't know all of the details of that Yom Kippur in the year 5609. 1848. Some of the story is surely inflected with legend and folklore. But what we do know is that Rabbi Yisrael Lipkin Salant understood that to be a religious leader, to be a teacher of Torah and Judaism's supreme values, meant reminding people to protect their health and that of others, that caring for those who have been afflicted by illness, that by viewing science and medicine as partners, as leaders in the mission of protecting human life, and that upholding human life above all other considerations, that those are truly the highest forms of piety, the greatest service to God and to our fellow human beings. As we, as a community, face another global health crisis, a global health crisis that has certainly affected the Jewish community, and as we approach another high holiday season, let us remember and internalize the courageous leadership of Rabbi Israel Lipkin Salanter as we seek to care for others, as we seek to protect ourselves and others from the coronavirus, and as we assert the ultimate and supreme value of human life above all others. As the Torah says, v'chai bahem v'lo yamut. We are meant to live by the mitzvot, not to die by them. May we all be blessed with good health, with strength, with forbearance, as we anticipate the end of this terrible pandemic, as we look forward to a future of good health and strength. May it come soon, b'mheira v'yameinu, speedily in our day. And I wish you once again a Chag Sameach, a Shavuot of joy and celebration, and most importantly, of good health.